Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of That Zoo podcast. I'm Ross Gurdon and my friend George Cuevas will be your hosts.
This podcast will cover everything that is zoo related. We will talk about zoo developments, new births, the latest news, and much more. So let's start with the news.
So to start with, Colchester Zoo have had cheetah cubs and they have named them using a public vote which has raised £3,500. The winning names were Nova, Hope, Star and Colonel Tom. 3 females and 1 male have been born, and also at Colchester there has been a pygmy hippo calf and bush dog pups in recent weeks.
Bannon Zoo has also had some babies born. There have been 4 Pallas cactuses born at the zoo after a 10-week gestation period. As well as this, they have had 2 Sri Lankan leopard cubs, and if you want to see them, you can go onto their YouTube channel and watch their live stream, where you can have a look into the den and see the cubs.
Next up is the sad news that Living Coast in Devon is going to close. So the attraction in Torquay has announced they're not going to reopen post-lockdown and are the first zoo to announce their permanent closure post-lockdown coronavirus crisis. The Wild Planet Trust that owns it has stated the need to make efficiency. The trust also owns Paynton Zoo and Newquay Zoo, and has stated that the organisation needs a restructuring. The Living Coast employs 44 people who are sadly now at risk of redundancy. Pre-closing, they attracted 6,500 school pupils every year, helping to educate them on the need for conservation and protection for many marine species. Initially it was stated that some animals may have to be euthanized, however in a recent update from park managers it was stated that new homes have been found for all of the park's residents. Obviously this is disappointing for everyone involved with the park and for visitors that have gone to the attraction over the years, but what if any effect do you think this situation will have moving forward on the zoo industry?
Yeah, it's probably given the zoos a bit of a scare and shows the need for visitors to be going to the zoos regularly, and it might make some zoos value their visitors more. How much will you personally miss Living Coast? Because I know that you've visited it multiple times before, and also do you have any special memories from the place?
Well, of course it's a huge shame that the park is going to close. I grew up going to it while I was holidaying in Devon, and it helped fuel my love for animals, which has brought you this podcast today. It offered something. I think it offered something very different to conventional zoos.
Yeah.
In the fact that it focused primarily on marine species, which I think is really good. Its unique nature meant that it educated people on oceans, and I hope there will be a legacy in the long term that people remember. So, do you know what is next for the site?
The primary focus is to move all the animals to new homes, which can be a long process, but hopefully they can all find new and safe homes.
Decisions on the site, what will happen next to it, will be made in upcoming council meetings.
Next up, we move to the next part of the news. Recently, Flamingo Land has revealed their latest mixed species exhibit, and it is quite a surprising one. They've actually mixed cheetahs and rhinos together, something that you don't often see in zoos. However, they have claimed that they are the only zoo, or the first zoo in the UK, to actually do this mixed species exhibit. However, that's not actually the case. Port Lympne Hotel and Reserve in Kent, they were actually the first ones to do this, and they did it about 3 years ago. So the Flamingo Land probably needs to change that statement. And their director or curator of the zoo has said this has been a long process that started in August last year when our cheetahs arrived, and we have 3 cheetah brothers. And here again he says it's the first time it's been done in the UK, which is basically not the case, but at least he's also said it's gone really well and the 2 species seem to be getting on fine.
So George, what are your thoughts on this one? Because I'll be honest, when you first told me the other day, I thought the cheetahs had escaped into the enclosure and entered the rhinos.
Well, I think it's a great achievement because it's not every day that you actually mix an apex predator with a herbivore, and it's pretty impressive. So yeah, hopefully more zoos do it in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely an innovative concept. Of course, cheetahs not naturally preying on rhinos. You can see why the park has taken this decision, and it'll be interesting to see if more zoos decide to follow suit.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of predator and prey setups, so yeah, hopefully more parks decide to do it in the future. Okay, now moving on to the main focus of this podcast, we are going to be looking at how zoos coped in lockdown. Obviously we've got the current situation that's still going, and many of you will know that zoos were forced to close quite a few months ago. They have opened since, but we're going to talk about how they've been coping with being closed. So all zoos closed during the nationwide lockdown imposed in March, with them remaining closed up until the 15th of June, and that was when they were allowed to reopen.
This came after increasing public pressure on the government to reverse the decision of telling zoos to prepare to remain closed indefinitely. This announcement led to Chester Zoo stating that they were struggling for funds and could make up to a £20 million loss by the end of this year. This has sparked a huge fundraising effort, which state has helped to raise £2.55 million for the zoo. Many other zoos publicly stated their struggles due to the lockdown, imposing closure on the zoos and virtually removing all the zoo's revenues overnight. Colchester Zoo stated that they were on their deathbed and were scraping the bottom of the barrel for funds. Numerous campaigns were then set up with the aim of reopening zoos, with one reaching over 125,000 signatures, stating that the zoo should be allowed to reopen, pointing out they are large outdoor spaces. Also, the Prime Minister's father, Stanley Johnson, was vocal on wanting zoos to reopen.
Finally, with all of the pressure, this led to the government allowing zoos to open on the 15th of June with strict safety measures put in place, including limited tickets, one-way systems, more hand washing stations, and not allowing visitors to go into any indoor areas such as animal houses.
Both me and George have visited zoos this week. So George, what were your thoughts on your trip to Chester Zoo on Monday?
First of all, I have to give credit to all of the zoos. They've put in many safety measures and restrictions to make their zoo as safe as possible. And when I went to Chester, this was made very clear. The zoo was very focused on making sure that their grounds were a safe place. I should also add that because zoos are limiting their tickets, there are a lot less people than usual visiting zoos, which makes for a much more peaceful visit. When I visited Chester Zoo, I noticed that some of the animals were quite surprised to see a flood of visitors. The jaguars hid for pretty much the whole day, and I find this quite funny because they're apex predators and they're scared of a few screaming children. So, and yeah, how does this compare to your visit to Whipsnade Zoo?
To start with, I'd like to thank the Great British Weather, which decided to chuck it down for a large portion of the day, even though it's been sunny for the last 3 months when we've been inside. But other than that, it was just nice to visit a zoo really for the first time in a long time. So George, are you surprised by the fact that quite a few zoos such as Marwell didn't open on June the 15th, the first day where they could reopen?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm quite surprised because I know that a lot of zoos are still struggling for money, and I expected them all to open first thing on June the 15th, but they haven't. Some are going to be opening in July. I'm guessing this is because they're still working on putting their restrictions in place, but I thought they'd be a bit more prompted to open sooner, but I guess not.
Yeah, you do state that the lack of revenue, especially Chester Zoo stated, I think last week, that 97% of their revenue comes from visitors.
Yeah.
And obviously during lockdown you still got to feed the animals, so continue to have high costs.
Yeah.
You would have thought they would open quite promptly.
The zoo that we are going to be focusing on today is ZSL London Zoo.
Run by the Zoological Society of London, which was founded in 1826 by Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles. ZSL London Zoo is the oldest zoo in the country, approaching its 200th anniversary. The zoo first opened to fellows of the society and the public with a written order from a fellow in 1828 before opening to any member of the public in 1847.
Since the zoo has opened, it has continued to grow and it has been adding lots more animals to their collection. Over the years they house giant pandas and elephants, as well as many more.
Increasing concern for animal welfare led to a significant drop in visitors in the 1980s and 1990s, which meant that in 1992 the ZSL London Zoo Council decided that London Zoo should close as it was losing money. However, a £1 million donation led to this decision being overturned.
Since then, much more naturalistic enclosures have been produced, helping to improve the zoo's reputation up to the present day. These included the Millennium Conservation Centre, opened by the Queen, the Komodo Island of Dragons, opened by Sir David Attenborough, Meet the Monkeys, which is a walk-through enclosure housing squirrel monkeys, and then multi-million-pound enclosures such as Gorilla Kingdom, opened in 2007, Penguin Beach in 2011, Tiger Territory in 2013, and Land of the Lions in 2016, which is their latest exhibit.
The zoo continues to be hugely popular, with over 1 million visitors in 2019, and has big plans for the future, including an update to the Snowdon Aviary. However, due to the current coronavirus crisis, it has launched a fundraising campaign led by David Attenborough to raise £12 million to aid the society's survival. The zoo, which has featured on television many times, including the 2010 documentary named The Zoo, will have a new documentary coming soon to ITV, giving viewers a glimpse behind the scenes during the current unprecedented times, which is expected to be called London Zoo, An Extraordinary Year. I'm a huge fan of London Zoo. It's got a very different feel about it, and when you visit with all the history surrounding it, especially with the mix of new exhibits and some of the older exhibits continue to be used, such as the reptile house. The zoo has a very different complexion to many other animal collections, as they now focus much more on many of the smaller species, with lots of the larger ones now housed at their sister site, Whipsnade Zoo. This allows them to have much more room. So what are your thoughts, George, on the zoo?
I believe that London Zoo is a fine institution, houses lots of species in mostly good enclosures. However, I have noticed that some of the zoo's areas show their age. For example, the zebra and giraffe enclosures in the Into Africa exhibit are quite small and old-fashioned. Despite this, the zoo has been upgrading many of their old enclosures, and an example of this is when they opened their new Asiatic lion enclosure in 2016. So hopefully their zebra and giraffe enclosures will follow suit. And personally, my favourite exhibit in London Zoo is their Rainforest Life exhibit, because it is very naturalistic and enriching for its animals. How about you, Ross? What's your favourite exhibit?
I agree, Rainforest Life is a fantastic exhibit, and it was one of the first of its kind, but I'd say the Squirrel Monkey walkthrough is my favourite, as it allows you to get up close to the squirrel monkey. And if you're lucky enough for someone to not see the sign and go in with their pushchair, you get to watch them all swarm it while a volunteer tries to stop them unsuccessfully. It's quite a funny sight, to be fair. How would you rank London Zoo compared to other UK zoos?
I think it would be somewhere in the middle. It does have some good exhibits, but I don't think it really compares in quality to zoos like Chester or Port Lim.
Yeah, I'd probably put it in maybe the top 20 zoos in the UK.
Yeah, I'd probably go with that as well. Now we are going to be answering some of your questions. Thanks to everyone who sent in some questions, and we apologise to those of you whose questions we can't answer in this podcast. But keep sending them in, because we will try and answer them in the next episode. The first question is from Grizzly Hound, and they have said, do you think farmyard animals belong in zoos?
I think I'd say they do. I mean, although I don't really go round the farmyard areas when I visit a zoo, I tend to focus more on the exotic creatures. I do think they have a place in zoos. They allow people, especially like young children, to be educated on farm animals and to come into closer contact with the animals, such as being like able to stroke them and feed them. Also, for those kids that live in cities, they may not see animals other than cats and dogs on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So, from Betty Pryor, can you explain your belief on hand-raising animals in zoos?
If an animal is unable to be cared for by its mother, I believe that they should be hand-reared. The whole point of zoos is animal welfare and conservation, and it is important that they do everything that they can to ensure the survival of all of their animals. So the answer is yes. I believe that hand-rearing animals is a good thing, and that it should be done whenever the baby is rejected.
I would tend to agree, although sometimes when mothers in the animal kingdom reject their offspring, it's because they have physical problems and they don't want to use their energy on raising them if they are likely to die. Also, it can be difficult with some species that get ingrained with human behaviours, learnt from the person hand raising them, and potentially this could have a long-term effect on the animal. But yeah, overall, you wouldn't want something to die, would you? So you got to hand raise. Why is that so funny, man?
The next question is from In's Right, and his question is, what do you think is the best zoo enclosure? Now, it's quite a broad question. I mean, it's quite hard to just pick one, but me and Ross have picked our favourites, and Ross will go first.
Yeah, so the first one that really popped into my head was Project Polar at Yorkshire Wildlife Park. It's such a big area with large pools and natural substrate for the park's polar bears. And also, like, when you see pictures of abroad enclosures for polar bears, many of them are quite poor, so it's nice to see that the Yorkshire Wildlife Park polar bears get treated a bit differently and have more space.
So my favourite zoo enclosure is probably Spirit of the Jaguar, because once again it's a large and naturalistic area. It perfectly replicates the South American rainforest, and I think it's probably the best enclosure in the world for jaguars. Now the next question is coming in from Vision It Photography on Instagram. Hello. And he says, what is your favourite least popular animal in a zoo? And that's quite an interesting one. So I'll go first, and Tommy, I would probably go with the clouded leopard. They're really awesome animals that are often overlooked due to how elusive and secretive they are. So yeah, I'll probably go with the clouded leopard.
I'd probably say maybe the New Guinea singing dog. They're quite rare in this country. You don't really see them at that many zoos. So
they're really cute as well.
Yeah, they are really cute, and they're quite friendly. They make a really nice noise. So yeah, I'll say the New Guinea singing dog.
And that brings us to the end of today's podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, comment down below, and make sure to tune in next month for the second episode. So, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.